How do you turn an impenetrable fortress into an unforgettable disaster for the defenders? By outsmarting them with one brilliant midnight discovery that changed everything. Welcome to the Battle of Cerro Gordo, where General Santa Anna, overconfident and entrenched, thought his 12,000 troops were untouchable. What he didn't see coming, a hidden path and one of history's greatest tactical minds. Before we dive into the wild events that unfolded, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more untold stories of military brilliance, underdog victories, and battles that changed the course of history. Welcome to the shadows and the past, where history meets mystery, and the past is your present. Now let's go back to April 1847 to see how one bold reconnaissance mission turned a mountain fortress into a stage for tactical genius. By the time the Battle of Cerro Gordo began, the Mexican-American War had already delivered plenty of dramatic moments. General Winfield Scott, commanding the U.S. forces, had just captured the vital port of Veracruz, but the ultimate prize, Mexico City, was still far in the distance. And between him and the capital stood the fortified mountain pass of Cerro Gordo, a natural stronghold. Scott, known as Old Fuss and Feathers for his strict adherence to military detail, was not one for recklessness. He knew brute force alone wouldn't win this fight. Facing him was General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, the often defeated but ever persistent Mexican commander. Despite his prior losses, including a rather infamous one at the Alamo, Santa Anna had dug in at Cerro Gordo, confident that his defenses would hold. With artillery lining the cliffs, natural barriers surrounding his army, and 12,000 men ready for action, Santa Anna believed his position was unbreakable. What he didn't account for was the cleverness of his opponent, or a hidden path that would turn his fortress into a trap. Scott's force of 8,500 troops couldn't afford a frontal assault. He needed another way in. And this is where Captain Robert E. Lee, at the time a relatively unknown officer, stepped into history. Lee's mission? Find a way around the Mexican defenses, a hidden path that could outflank Santa Anna's forces and strike from behind. But finding such a path was easier said than done. The terrain was steep, the enemy watchful, and the stakes sky high. Yet, in true Lee fashion, calm and collected, he set off under the cover of night. Imagine it, climbing through treacherous hills, dodging enemy patrols, all while scanning the landscape for any sign of weakness. And then he found it. A narrow, hidden trail winding through the hills that bypassed Santa Anna's defenses entirely. A single path that, if used correctly, could change the course of the battle. This was the game-changing discovery Scott needed. But it wasn't just about finding the path. It was about using it with military brilliance. Let's pause for a second. What would you have done in Lee's shoes? Could you have spotted that hidden path in the dead of night? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button so more history fans like you can join in. With the secret path now revealed, Scott devised a brilliant plan. While General Gideon Pillow would lead a frontal attack to distract the Mexican forces, General David E. Twiggs and part of the U.S. Army would take Lee's hidden route, flanking Santa Anna's army and attacking from behind. The night of April 17, 1847, saw the quiet movement of U.S. troops as they prepared to spring their trap. At dawn, Pillow's men launched their attack, engaging the Mexican front lines. Santa Anna, expecting an easy defense, had his forces focused entirely on this frontal assault. But here's where it gets really good. As the Mexicans fought in the front, Twiggs' flanking force, guided by Lee's secret path, took up positions on the high ground. And at just the right moment, the U.S. artillery, placed in the perfect spot thanks to Lee's reconnaissance, opened fire. Cannon blasts rained down from above, hitting the Mexican army from behind. It was chaos. Imagine being a Mexican soldier. You've been told your position is untouchable, only to find yourself under fire from a direction you never saw coming. The shock and confusion spread like wildfire through the Mexican ranks. In a matter of minutes, Santa Anna's carefully laid defenses began to crumble. As the U.S. forces charged forward, storming the heights, the Mexicans were overwhelmed. And in the midst of the chaos, Santa Anna himself realized that this was a battle he couldn't win. Now, if you know anything about Santa Anna, you'll know he had a bit of a flair for dramatic exits. And Cerro Gordo was no exception. As his army fell apart around him, Santa Anna made his escape, not on a noble steed, but on a mule. That's right, the mighty general was last seen riding off into the hills, leaving behind not just his army, but also his prosthetic leg. Yes, you heard that right. In the rush to flee, Santa Anna left behind his prosthetic leg, which the Americans gleefully captured and turned into a war trophy. Sometimes history writes its own punchlines. By the end of the battle, over 1,000 Mexican soldiers were dead or wounded, and 3,000 were captured. The US forces, on the other hand, suffered fewer than 500 casualties. Cerro Gordo, the impenetrable fortress, had fallen, not to brute force, but to one bold maneuver. Lee's discovery of the hidden path turned the tide of the war, and with Santa Anna on the run, the road to Mexico City was now wide open. But this wasn't just a tactical victory. It was a proving ground for some of history's most famous military minds. Alongside Robert E. Lee, we had future Civil War leaders like James Longstreet, George Pickett, and even Stonewall Jackson cutting their teeth on the battlefield. They were soldiers then, but they were learning lessons they'd carry into their future conflicts. Now, let me ask you, what would you have done in Santa Anna's place? Could you have anticipated Lee's bold flanking maneuver? Or was this battle lost the moment that hidden path was found? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing your take on these pivotal moments in history. And let's reflect for a moment. The Battle of Cerro Gordo is more than just a story of military strategy. It's a reminder that in both war and life, sometimes the boldest move is the one that wins. It wasn't the strongest position that won the day. It was the boldest decision. Santa Anna's fortress, once considered unbreakable, was undone by one act of ingenuity. If you enjoyed this deep dive into military history, make sure to subscribe for more from Shadows in the Past. And if you know someone who would love to hear about Lee's brilliant flank at Cerro Gordo, share this video with them. Coming up next, we'll explore the Battle of Monterrey, where a future US president proved that sometimes impossible odds are just an opportunity in disguise. Remember, in battle, it's not the size of your army that counts, it's how you use it. Welcome to the Shadows in the Past, where history meets mystery, and the past is your present.